As we've just seen in the clip, pigs are highly intelligent social animals with innate behavioural needs. They prefer to live in groups and have a strong instinct to forage and root. However, in many modern farming systems, pigs are often subjected to overcrowding, a lack of bedding material, and a lack of rooting material. The European Food Safety Authority report, published in 2007 on animal health and welfare in fattening pigs, reported that in the UK, approximately 75% of pigs have no manipulable material, or what they term a restricted amount. In other words, not enough to meet their behavioural needs. Failure to provide for a pig's behavioural needs can result in abnormal behaviours, one of which is tail biting. And a common way to try and reduce the risk of tail biting later in life is to tail dock when they're piglets. Tail docking is often carried out before other measures have been tried to prevent tail biting. As I'm sure Peter will talk about later, the law clearly states that other measures must be undertaken first before resorting to docking. Now, the European legislation that governs how we keep and treat pigs is due to be reviewed, probably sometime next year, but we're not entirely sure when. And we believe it's vital that this review covers these issues. The RSPCA, amongst others I'm sure, will be calling for greater space allowances, mandatory provision of bedding, enrichment material that really meets the pig's behavioural needs, a ban on castration without anaesthesia and analgesia. At the moment, piglets can be castrated without anaesthesia and analgesia if they're under 7 days of age, and all other mutilations, and by that I mean tail docking, teeth clipping and nose ringing, only to be performed when there are genuine welfare-related reasons for doing so. Also, we would like to see a gradual phase out of farrowing crates. Whilst legislation is a really important tool for change, consumers also have considerable power to try and influence farming practices. And there have been numerous studies undertaken and surveys done to show that consumers really are concerned about the welfare of the animals they eat. In a TNS survey commissioned by the RSPCA and carried out in December 2008, 83% of those surveyed stated that they agreed or strongly agreed that animal welfare is an important consideration when buying pork. And similarly, a survey by the IGD in 2009 showed that even despite the recession, a third of shoppers expect to be buying more foods with higher welfare standards in the future. Now, we often get told that people's good intentions don't translate to the checkout, that they say one thing in a survey but do another thing when it comes to actually shopping. But many of those who want to do purchase higher welfare products and do support such farming systems. I think it's evidenced by the fact that we've seen significant growth in the number of Freedom Food approved pig farms in recent years. For those who don't know, Freedom Food is the RSPCA's farm assurance scheme, which aims to ensure that animals are reared, transported and slaughtered according to welfare standards developed and monitored by the RSPCA. Now, this covers indoor, outdoor and free-range production, and at the moment, about 20% of the UK pig herd is reared to RSPCA standards under the Freedom Food scheme. But something that we're often told is that consumers just don't have enough information to make an informed decision. In the TNS survey I referred to earlier, 23% said they didn't buy higher welfare pork because they basically don't know much about how the pigs were reared. And a further 19% said the labelling of pork products was too confusing or even absent to allow them to make an informed choice. And only a staggering 2% of those questioned understood production method terms such as outdoor bred, outdoor reared and free range. Basically, most shoppers, consumers out there are confused about what they're buying and how pigs are actually reared. And obviously we believe that there's every reason for shoppers to be confused, because at the moment it can mean different things depending on what you buy and where you buy it. Now, there has been a lot of focus on country of origin labelling recently. As was hinted at in the film, there are ambiguous terms out there like produce of the UK, produced in the UK. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's where the pig was reared. It basically means that's where that product underwent its last substantial change. So in other words, take the example of ham, it could have just been cured in this country, whereas the pigs that produce that ham could have come from overseas. Now, it is really encouraging that this issue is being looked at, and the Pig Industry Supply Chain Task Force, which is a group set up by the government to look at a number of aspects of the UK pig industry. It's really encouraging they're about to launch a code of practice on this issue. But we believe that this doesn't go far enough. Obviously, a meaningful label that says produce of the UK will tell you that it was reared, transported in this country, and it will give a guarantee to those people that do want to support British farming, and there are a lot of people out there that do. it doesn't give any indication of how that pig was reared. It will tell you that that pig did not come from a sow that was kept in a stall at any time, and that it probably wasn't castrated. But, as I said, a lot of information isn't provided. For example, we wouldn't know if that pig came from a farrowing crate system, for example, if it was raised in a slatted and barren environment, or whether it was provided with lots of straw, for example. That's why we believe that production method labelling should be mandatory, and it should hopefully give consumers this information. That's why we've been working with the pig industry to try and develop criteria for those labels currently in use, and by that I mean outdoor bred, outdoor reared and free range. Because at the moment there isn't a legal or even industry agreed definitions for these terms. Once finalised, we really hope that retailers will commit to sourcing pigs raised under these criteria when they use these labels. And ideally, in the long term, we would love to see it have legal status. After all, we have European law governing labelling of poultry meat and eggs with production methods, so why not pig meat? Labelling can and does make a real difference to animal welfare. A really good example is the case of eggs. In 2004, mandatory labelling came in for production system, in other words, free range, organic, barn, cage. And from 2004, we've seen an increase in the UK of hens kept in the higher welfare systems, barn, organic and free range, from 31% to 45% in 2009. And likewise, an increased awareness of the conditions under which standard meat chickens are kept, and a greater understanding and recognition of the alternative, freedom food, following high-profile campaigns and television programmes by a number of celebrity chefs in early 2008. Following that, we've seen a proportional increase in sales of freedom food chicken, and by that I mean indoor and free range, of 64% between 2007 and 2008. So I think it's clear that labelling with production method can make a real difference. That's why we believe it's essential that all pig meat is clearly and consistently labelled. Only in that way can consumers make an informed choice about which production method systems they want to support. Only then will they be able to translate their willingness to buy higher welfare products into direct action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate.